I'm Mike Vardy, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Tim O'Hare, where you get to ask me the questions. The tables have been turned for this episode, so let's get started.
Good to be here to ask these questions. We've got questions that have come in to you via email. I've got one or two up my sleeve myself, and hopefully those of you who are watching live will put some questions in the chat, and we can try and pull those out as we go. But I'm going to start actually with a question from somebody who is actually watching the live stream at the moment, one of the TimeCrafting Trust Premium members, Gloria Jean, familiar face person to both of us, I know. It's really about staying on track. A lot of us know what we should be doing. Life gets in the way. We get in our own way. What are the best steps to right our ship?
That's a great question, Gloria Jean, which is not surprising at all. A very thoughtful and intentional question. I think I always come back to this, Tim, and it isn't the sexiest of answers, and it actually, for some people, makes you think that you're adding more to your plate. And at face value, it seems like it. But then the result of doing this actually will make the plate either cleaner or, like you pointed out, during the introduction before we hit record, you'll be spinning less plates, the right plates, whatever. It's journaling. Like, journaling is such a huge, undervalued and underappreciated thing that you can do to right the ship. And let me explain why I think that it's something that doesn't get used nearly as much as it should, at least what I believe. So number one, for those that have followed other kind of productivity framework systems, what have you, like getting things done. Let's use that as an example, because that's the first one that comes to mind. The thing that gets people stuck are things like the weekly review, because there's just so much to review, especially your first time around. Because when you're setting up the system, you're actually kind of asked to collect everything and kind of catch your bearings. And the problem with doing it, once per week, I found, is it took too long. Like, just took too long to do on a Friday or a Sunday or what have you. And what I found over time is, instead of doing like a weekly review where you're literally going through each day, and the hopes would be that you would course correct, like anything that wasn't working, you would again right the ship. I found that daily journaling was something that allowed me to do that with far less friction. So, to me, just taking 5 minutes out of your day, and I'm beating this to death. There's a 5-minute journal notebook, and there's a 5-minute journal app. Like, there are apps and systems out there that will support a journaling habit. To kind of ask yourself, either if you're following TimeCrafting and you want to say, hey, did I follow my daily themes? Or even, if you're doing something like the urgent important, like the Eisenhower matrix or anything like that, if you say, hey, did I live up to this stuff? It acts as a reminder, like a catalyst for getting you back on track. It's a check-in, right? And the argument I've always heard is, I don't have time for that. Well, I mean, there's no structured way to journal that requires you to use a huge amount of time. You can spend, like I said, 5 minutes. You could just dictate it. You could do whatever, but it's about getting out of your own way. And journaling often kind of clears the cruft and gets you that clarity. And when you've got that clarity, I think it's Thomas Merton that said clarity affords focus. So the other thing I think that happens, and I've discussed this before, especially, and I mean, this is a generalized statement, but for a lot of guys out there, they're like, oh, keeping a diary. This came up actually in a focus. I think it came up in one of our socials, where the term diary is the term you use in the UK for calendar or schedule,
that's right?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, in North America, I would say that diary is mostly aligned with the idea of a journal, especially like the journal that, young women or young girls would keep with the lock and the key and all that stuff. So when a guy thinks about that, at least historically, and again, I'm being very general here, there's this, it's a diary. Like, why would I keep that? Why would I talk about, feelings, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what am I going to journal about? A journal doesn't have to be this emptying of your soul, or, this emotional reckoning. It could be a captain's log, like in Star Trek. Like, it doesn't have to be that. So, but you have to make it your own, right? You have to say, like, this is what I will be able to do consistently and sustainably. I have found that for me, especially, even when I stop journaling, and there's been moments where I've like missed a day or several, it's always when I journal that I get back that I'm able to right the ship. So I would say, Gloria Jean, I know there's the only reason I made that such a long answer is I have to drive this home a lot, because it's just something it's a waste of time. Why do I want to? I mean, I've got to look ahead to tomorrow, not reflect on today. That reflective practice is so valuable. It will be the thing that keeps you going in the right direction, as opposed to just going.
Yeah, I remember when we spoke for the productivity diet podcast we did, talking about reflection being journaling being a way of course correction, really easy, quick course correction. I think you're an advocate, aren't you, of kind of prompting questions? Are you an advocate of having prompt questions in journaling?
Yeah. Again, yes, if that's what you need. But so I think that prompting can be really helpful to kickstart the habit, right? To get you going, and also get you going again. Like, for example, if I've taken 4 or 5 days for some reason off, like let's say I go on vacation, I don't journal. Although I do tend to journal when I'm on vacation, just because there's those moments I want to be able to look back on, and when I read my journal, to go, oh yeah, I remember when I did this. But prompting can help because it gives you some direction. Like, it gives you, hey, did I live up to my daily theme today? Yes or no? Well, why not?
Yeah.
And then it kind of it'll get you going. I mean, and prompting doesn't have to be verbal either. It could be, I'll often look at my photos, and that'll be the catalyst for the entry. So anything that will get you doing it is a win. And I think prompting can be that. I think that over time, the prompts don't necessarily need to be there, but it's nice to have them in your toolkit when you do need them.
Yeah, well, I guess you can always ignore them, can't you? But I think if you're going to go for kind of fairly short sessions of journaling, then having a 2 or 3 prompt questions is quite useful, because otherwise you can kind of get caught up in whatever's in your mind. And then, I find this, I sit down to journal for 15 minutes, and like half an hour later, I'm still only just sort of, it's all flowing. So yeah, having questions can help keep you on track, can't it?
Right. Well, and I think the other thing too is that figuring out how you want to journal, not just the prompting, but do you want to sit and do a handwritten journal? I mean, I do handwrite some of my entries, but that's a completely separate journal. I use Reflection as my journaling app, as like a daily one. But there's moments, like I actually have a Inner Jedi journal that I bought, or got as a gift. And I just thought it was neat to kind of, because it's a different angle to look at. The Monk Manual is a great kind of journal planner combo that I've used before, and that we've had Steve on the show before. And they also have what's the name of the they have a larger planner as well, that you like, kind of more of a life mapping kind of event. I wish I could remember it offhand right now. I've got it over here. So it's called the Life Atlas. There we go. So I've got it right here. Like, the Life Atlas is more of a deeper kind of practice. And that's the thing too, is that some types of journaling could be very, chronologically logging your time, and others, or just your tasks or what have you. Others can be more aligned with, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm going through. Here are some of the things I'm discussing and being disgusted by, I guess, maybe. But the point is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just the doing it. I think that's the trick, and prompting can definitely help with that.
Yeah. Good. Great. I'm going to move us on to another question. I'm going to jump over to a question. You're not allowed to answer this with journaling again, okay? Because there's a danger that you might, maybe. But
okay.
Thinking about aligning vision and reality with this one. So this is from Susan via the email. Many of us have a big vision and feel called to make a real impact, but our to-do list grows daily, and we often feel like we're falling behind, leading to stress and possibly burnout. How can we better navigate this gap between what we want to do and what we can realistically get done?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that we really have to get out of our heads that we are able to accomplish so much within a short period of time and think longer term. It's that, what's that phrase? We overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year, right? We need to kind of, I think the simplest way to do this is to go through that urgent, important kind of matrix in your head. Is this urgent? And really know what urgent means, right? I mean, when I work with clients before, coaching clients, because I do one-on-one and I do group coaching, but when I do one-on-one, we get into the weeds with this. And, they say, this is urgent. I'm like, well, what does urgent mean to you? Right? Because and I use this metaphor a lot from the movie The Incredibles, which is the villain in The Incredibles syndrome. His plan was to make everybody a superhero, because when everybody is super, no one is, right? And if you make everything urgent, then nothing is. If you make everything important, then nothing is. So you really need to be clear on what's urgent and what's important. And I think what happens is we often put urgent before important. And that's why when that matrix shows up, I always find it fascinating. And again, when I work with clients, they're like, I'm like, is this important? Yes. And then invariably, some tasks get to urgent and important. And I'm like, well, how did it get there? And they said, well, I didn't spend time on this. And then I asked them, well, what were they spending time on? And invariably, they were spending time on things that were urgent but not important, not important and not urgent, or urgent and important from, again, that backlog. So I think that the thing that Susan and others should take into account is get really clear on what urgent means to you. And by the way, urgent could be different depending on who it's coming from. Like your boss may have a level of urgency and importance that your colleagues don't. Let's say, for example, you may have a good example is we have 6 yards of crushed rock out front of our house because we're doing some yard work. It is not urgent that we clear that and finish the garden up, but it is important that we do it. Now, come October, it now becomes urgent and important because pretty soon we'll be out of that season. So again, we ordered that gravel in the beginning of June. So it's now, as we're recording this, the end of July. So we're getting to that point. We're about halfway there. And so we're making little bits of inroads. I think the other thing that goes hand in hand with this, Tim, and I think that people, if they do these two things, I think it'll help Susan and others, is breaking down those big tasks into smaller ones. Because you'll find a few things. Number one, you'll find projects that are masquerading as tasks on your to-do list, number one. Number two, you'll realize how big these things are, and you'll be able to actually tackle them bit by bit by bit, which means you'll be able to make measured progress on those important things so that they don't become urgent and important. But also, you'll see steps that you don't even need to do at all. Like if you see the whole picture, you can cut things out. You can also see things not just that you would cut out, but things you could delegate. So I think those two things combined can be really helpful. Number one, getting really clear on what urgent means to you and what important means to you. And there needs to be a distinct difference. And then secondly, breaking those larger tasks or projects really down into their smallest particles, like to their smallest increment, so that you can then clearly delineate where your attention will go and where it doesn't really need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. My problem with the Eisenhower matrix has always been the urgent bit, and I think that you hit it really. That what urgent normally means for people is it's important to somebody else.
Yeah,
and that creates a sense of urgency that's not really there, but you feel it is there because it's a boss or somebody needing this, and yeah, I mean that's true. And the other point about breaking things down, I think certainly I've found that as a user of the kind of advice you give out. You can't overestimate how small you should break the tasks down to, because actually you sometimes need to make the task so ridiculously small. But then you have got no excuse whatsoever to get on and do it. But yeah,
and this is actually
not enough.
This is actually interesting because we had this conversation on our social about AI and time crafting, and you kind of challenged me like, well, Mike, but time crafting and AI, and And here's an example where I think AI can be helpful. We've talked a little bit about this in the community, and we're going to dive more into this inside of the premium community stuff. Like, where does AI fit in and how does that work? Should it work? All the nuances involved with it. But for the sake of this recording, what I'll say is, and the live stream, is AI can help you with that breaking down of projects into their smallest particles. And there's apps that can do it right built in, like ClickUp now allows you to go, hey, I want to do this, and it will break it down into really small steps. And then you decide, okay, do I need this step? Do I not? And it will really go granular as you want it to go. And it will catch things that you might miss or that you've kind of combined or compounded into, into one task. And I always caution people, this is a way to know if your task is actually a project masquerading in disguise. If your task says write email and send email, that's 2 tasks, right? So you don't need to do those in the same day. You don't. You could write the email and save it as a draft, and then you could send it, right? You might want to do write email, sit on it for a day, then have a second task go reread email, because it might be a really important one that you don't want to screw up. And then it could be send email, like the day before it's, there's a deadline. But that's where I think certain things like AI can be helpful is you may have some blind spots to what steps might be in a task or a project, especially if you've never done it before. And so to get the larger picture, it's way easier for us to do quality control and to kind of winnow out things once they're in front of us, which is why brain dumps are so effective, right? Like, just get it out of your head and then let's look at it all. If you can let AI in some way, shape, or form, as comfortable as you are, or whatever level of comfort you have, to say, okay, great, it's now broken it down. I need to do all of these steps except for step 4, 7, 12, and 16. And so I think that that's where that intersection can happen. But again, you have to be judicious with it. Like, you can't just leave it. I mean, the worst thing you could do, and this is where people get thrown off, is they'll say, Mike, I broke down my to-do, like my task list, these projects. Now I have way more things to do. No, you just made the invisible visible. Like, that's all. You have no more to do. You can just see it more clearly. So the same thing happens in this instance. And so the resistance isn't, I don't think, based on, I don't want to do all this stuff. It's, I don't want to make decisions on this stuff, or I don't want to see all this stuff, or it's going to overwhelm me. It has nothing to do with all that stuff. There's going to be things you don't need to do around it. But this is where I think artificial intelligence, generative AI, all of this can be an aid for us, as opposed to kind of a thing that we use to do things. It could be a way for us to filter, to make better decisions, to optimize.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking there about decision and having having to make decisions. And sometimes, your example of writing and then sending the email, sometimes there's a hidden task in before, such as, locate the email that I need to reply to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not actually sure of all those things at the outset, then you think, I've got to write that email, but I don't know where it is. Oh, I'll do it later. And then you end up
or you've got some stuff you want to put in the email, but there's still some research that you need to do. So you get started and then you leave it in your drafts. Like, that would be a good way to do it. And there's so much technology allowing for you now to say, okay, I'm going to send the email. You can hit send, but it could be send later. So you could say, I want to send it. I'm done, but I don't want to send it today. I want to send it in 3 days, because if I send it today, they're going to volley more work back at me that I'm not ready for. And they don't need it for 2 more days. So I will use the technology. And you think more clearly around this stuff, as opposed to, I got to reply to this email and send it, boom. And it's just this, it's the pause. It's the space, not just the time. And I think when you keep that in mind, it allows you to, again, deal with things like course correcting, righting the ship, like urgency, having that clear definition. But, we have to be willing to kind of buck the trend of go, fast, now. And if we can do that, then we can make better decisions and ultimately be in this state of productiveness for longer and in a more intentional way.
I've got a long one now. I'm going to read it all actually, but I'll paraphrase it as well
Okay.
for a question. This came in via email. This is from Stan. Just as a bit of context, he says he's 68 years old and loves learning new technology, but the changes that are going on that I'll describe in a moment are making him reach for the antacid tablets or whatever they're called, wherever you happen to be living.
Mhm.
So his context is as follows. He says, "My work is currently implementing some rather hyperactive cybersecurity measures. It is causing a significant shift in our digital tools and workflows. I've been a dedicated Evernote user since 2009 and a Todoist user since 2017. And up until now, I've managed to seamlessly integrate these personal tools with our Microsoft 365 ecosystem, including Outlook and Teams. Boy, there's a lot of different software going on here, but it gets more. However, it seems more changes are on the horizon. We've already transitioned from OneDrive to Box for file storage, and Asana is being introduced as our new project management tool. I anticipate that personal accounts like Evernote and Todoist might be next on the chopping block, which is quite concerning as it threatens to severely disrupt my established workflow processes. While I might be able to pivot to Microsoft To Do, just as an aside, I'd say don't pivot to Microsoft To Do,
No.
or Planner as replacements for Todoist. I rely heavily on Evernote for my daily work. Unfortunately, OneNote, which I've always considered a weak competitor to Evernote, is not an option as it's been disabled on our devices in favor of Box. Given these circumstances, I'm at a bit of a loss as to how to maintain my productivity. Do you have any insights or suggestions on how to navigate such a drastic change, short of literally begging for exceptions? So basically, the question is, what do you do when you're being forced to change all the software and the apps and the systems that you've so lovingly got used to using over the years?
That's a great question, Stan, and it's also not an uncommon thing that goes on because, I mean, the good news is increasingly organizations are starting to recognize that they can't rely on things like email and Slack as project managers. I'll give them that because I think, Tim, they said they're moving to Asana as well. I think is what
I
you
think
said.
they've got they've moved to Asana, yeah,
Yeah.
and
So the one thing that I will say, and I mean, it's really tricky to give a very specific answer to your specific scenario because everything is so different. But what I will say is the one reason why I got out of like writing about apps constantly is number one, they change so rapidly. Number two, it's not about the app, it's about the approach. So what I mean by that is if you are following time crafting as an example, you can take the elements of time crafting, time theming, again, attention paths and reflective practice. And those can be done in any of those apps. Like, so you're using Evernote, you can use elements of time crafting. Same thing with Todoist. Asana, you can as well. Box is different because Box is more like, I would imagine it's going to act as kind of like a SharePoint kind of thing for you.
yeah,
I mean, which by the way, to be fair, at least it's not SharePoint. Because that can get because that can get unwieldy too, right? You know what I mean?
we
Like,
have SharePoint at my work.
yeah, it can get unwieldy. And at least you're not moving to Microsoft Project either. Like Microsoft To Do, as you pointed out, Tim, it is bare bones compared to what it was before. If they had kept it
Mm.
the way Wunderlist was, you should have. It would actually be a more seamless move from Todoist to Wunderlist / Microsoft To Do than to Asana because the simplicity factor and the elegance is still there. It's very skeuomorphic and so on and so forth. The design is very clean. What I would recommend you do is start to, while this change is happening, we'll talk about Todoist first because Evernote's a whole other kettle of fish. But if you're using Todoist, what I would do is I would start to look for the commonalities between the two apps. So let me give you an example. There's labels in Todoist and there's tags in Asana. Whatever labels you're using in Todoist, start to incorporate as tags in Asana. Todoist now has, again, and this is not relatively new, but we're exploring it more, is Todoist has dates and they have deadlines, right? So in Asana, you can have start dates and then end dates. So in Todoist, if you're using deadlines already and you're already using dates, then your start date in Todoist your date in Todoist could be your start date in Asana. That's the date you want to bring it to your attention and when you should start, again, essentially working on the thing. And then your deadline in Todoist would be your end date or your due date in Asana. So start to look for those things that can cross both, right? I would recommend that you, again, if you're using time crafting, go, okay, well, my labels in Todoist are my attention paths. So my tags in Asana are going to be my attention paths. And my My themes can also be your tags or labels, right? Like they can cross over. Same thing with Evernote, by the way. You can do this with tagging in Evernote and all that stuff too. I would start to dip my toe in that, but I would be communicative too. I would be very clear with if you have the access to your supervisor, whatever, say, hey, look, I recognize that we're moving to this. I've been using this. I want to migrate. I'm going to start migrating myself over to this. Like you have to have that communication process in play because you're not the only one. I mean, somebody's probably using Trello in your organization instead of or they're using OmniFocus or some other kind of solo tool so they can track it. Or maybe they're using email, so they haven't even really used anything. So I would start there. In terms of Evernote, if OneNote's been disabled, because OneNote would be the natural progression, that will be a bit more interesting. But Asana does have the ability to attach attachments and link to things and so on and so forth. So again, that communication process could be, hey, I've been using Evernote for storing resources and files and all this stuff, but there's also PDFs. Look at how you can either integrate it into Box or integrate it into Asana. Because you can do that in Asana. You can have files and docs and all that stuff stored there. That's where I would start. There's no question that if they're going all in on Microsoft, that they're going to be using some of the AI tools there too, like Copilot and all that stuff, unless they're going to disable them. But you're becoming an all Microsoft world. I would not be using the tasks aspect in Outlook. It's not effective. But I would start to look at the commonalities between Todoist and Asana and figure out how you can start to bridge that gap. Because I do that with ClickUp and Todoist as well. Like I use both. So in Todoist, I have labels, and ClickUp, I have tags, right? So that's where I would start. And then just communicate. I mean, you're clearly tech savvy. If you're using Todoist and Evernote, like you know how to navigate, which you have a leg up at your age compared to some of the other people that are on that would be just using email. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to an organization and we've tried to implement some kind of task management system, and the people that are either been there the longest or have been there the longest and are at the C-suite level are still using email as their way of kind of leading tasks and projects. Sounds like that's changing in your organization or has never been the case. So I would be, again, mapping and communicating, I think, is the best as you make through your way through this, because they're going to see that you're trying. You're not complaining. That's the thing. Complaining is not going to get you anywhere. But just say, I'm trying to navigate this change. Here's what I do. Any recommendations on how you might want me to do, how we're going to do it going forward, and then start to line that up. It's not going to be an overnight, magic pill situation either. It's going to take some time, but I would start to look at those commonalities now so that you can make your way forward, because you're going to go through a lot of Tums or Rolaids otherwise.
Yeah. I guess if you can sort of get in with the right attitude early, you can maybe shape a little bit some of the ways things are done, some of the ways things are set up. And I mean, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? But it does really illustrate this question, I think, how we're kind of at the mercy of the software developers who are always trying to put more and more things into the apps to make us use it in more and more different ways. And actually that just, you can end up getting really tied up in knots. And as you said at the start of that answer, it's really knowing your approach and having not overcomplicating your systems in the first place does make this kind of migration much easier.
I also think that you should keep using Todoist and Evernote for your personal stuff. Like I think but because number one, your effort won't feel wasted inside those apps if you do that. Secondly, it's good to keep those two things separate anyway, because you'll know, oh, this is a personal thing. It's in Todoist. So you won't be seeing work stuff in Todoist. You know, oh, Todoist is my personal and Asana is my work, right? So that way, they don't cross streams. Same thing with Evernote, whatever you end up using, for work. Unless they decide that they're going to keep Evernote around, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they're going to be integrating. I mean, if they're using Box, they're going to start to integrate. And I mean, there may be ways. I've not looked closely enough at Box, to be honest, to see how much commonality is between Evernote and Box, other than, resource storage at best. But I mean, Dropbox years ago introduced Dropbox Paper. They started to expand, but then that's to your point, Tim. There are so many tools out there that don't stay in their lane necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Like that
Mhm.
they start to go beyond, and it's largely because of what VCs want, and innovation doesn't always show through optimization or improvement of existing features. It's new feature,
You've
new
always,
feature, new feature, because that
yeah,
that that symbolizes growth more than stabilization does. So
yeah.
again, those are the two things I would look at. And again, if you have any issues, don't hesitate to email me back. I know you emailed me that question, and I took a look at it. I'm like, this is one I think we should address, because it's not it's a very common issue about how do I either move technology, or how do I adopt it, right? Because that's the other thing too. So again, always focus on the approach first, and then the application, because the apps have come and gone and will continue to change, and they will continue to iterate. So as long as your approach is sound, then you're going to be ahead of so many others.
Yeah, great. Good. I'm going to throw in a little curveball type question, although you've already given us one example of
Mhm.
this already, so you obviously can't go back on that one. Are there any books, I'm thinking fiction probably, or films that you particularly enjoy for the time crafting wisdom that they contain?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Thanks, Tim, for that great question.
And the warning you got, yeah.
Oh man, there are so uh About Time is one of my favorite movies. Um why I like it, how I find it akin to time crafting is a couple things. Number one, the movie isn't what you think it's about until you're well in it. And time crafting, to me, there's so much more to it than just, hey, here's a way you can check off boxes and get things done. Like there's a depth to it. So I like that, but the way you get into it, once you're in it, you're like, oh, okay. And then there's a leaning in process. But it takes the aha moment, right? And there is an aha moment inside of when you're watching About Time. You're like, oh,
Mhm.
so this isn't this film. This is what it's about. And again, I think the other thing is it's not perfect either. It's not a perfect film. It's nuanced. The way that the main character approaches things is very nuanced, and there's layers. I like that one. uh I would say a recent film that really kind of, and I read the book too for this, but the short story, which is what it's based on, isn't as good as the film, which is rare. Is The Life of Chuck, the new Stephen King penned short story that was adapted by Mike Flanagan for the screen rather. uh what I loved about that, number one, is it showcased life in a non-linear way, which is how we try to make things linear, and they're in the wrong. Like we sequence things in a way that we believe they should be sequenced based on how it's always been done, and yet it's not necessarily the best way to do it. So, for example, we look at our to-do list and we go, "Oh, well, here's the list," and we go through it from top to bottom, as opposed to batching it, as opposed to inverting it, whatever you need to do. Grouping it by attention path or daily theme or what have you. The way that film kind of shakes out, it does that. It doesn't, it sequences very strangely, but very, it makes sense the way it does it. But also, and I don't want to spoil it, but it
No,
really does.
don't spoil it.
No, no, but there's a lesson in it that I really think applies to what time crafting can lead to, right? Like the end, the be all end all. Um, I think that those are the two that immediately come to mind. I mean, there's the thing is, and Tim, I'll kind of piggyback on top of this, is because I spent so much time before my life doing this as a comedian style actor type, for lack of a better term, like I was doing comedy, is I always looked for the funny in things. That's what got me into doing productivity parody, which is how I started. And now, years later, because my mind works that way, find the funny. Now it's always find the time, find the
Mm.
relevancy. And so I'm quite adept at it. Sometimes I will try to shoehorn it in when it doesn't. I've gotten better about that. But more often than not, you can apply, oh, this is about time. Oh, this is about time. Oh, this is about time, to almost any story, because it's it's the constant, it's the unknown, it's all of that. And so because I was able to do that with comedy, I'm able to do that with time crafting and with, this idea of being productive and managing your relationship with time. I see a lot of it, either glimpses in films or there's a theme throughout. I mean, and I think those two are probably
Yeah.
the ones. Tick Tick Boom would be another. The story about Jonathan. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his last name. He created Rent. Wow, it's my brain's not working on that front right now. But just the idea of him dying so young, and yet still having, like following his path and all that stuff. Like you don't know how long you're going to get, and so on and so forth. So there's
Mhm.
always those things there. But I would say that the first two
Yeah.
were movies I did not expect to have that necessarily come out the way it did.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've watched About Time, but quite a long time ago, and I keep meaning to rewatch it. As you mentioned it several times, and the other one, I can't remember the name now, but the other one's not out.
The life of Chuck.
Yeah,
It's not
it's not out
available.
in the UK yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hitting it's in theaters. It's hitting the art house theaters more and more here now. I mean, but I've seen it
mm,
twice in theaters. I don't. The only shows I normally go see in theaters twice are superhero shows.
yeah,
So
like,
there you
like
go.
The
Although,
Incredibles.
well, I've seen that. Remember, I have kids, and my daughter would
Yeah,
watch
so
The Incredibles. Like, so
yeah,
yeah, I've seen that. Well, I actually saw Fantastic Four and Superman. Superman was really good too. Superman had elements of it in it. Like, so I will always find something. My biggest thing is to try to suspend that. Just, like, okay, yes, I recognize it, but can we just enjoy the film, Mike, and not try to?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a bit like that as well. It's funny actually because I mean we won't go into them all in detail, but I mean you mentioned The Incredibles, but I think most of the Pixar films well they're pretty profound, all of them,
Soul,
aren't they?
Soul,
Yeah, I
like,
mean
which
they
I've
are
not seen.
really.
I've not, I need to rewatch that because there's a couple things. Number one, see, this is like, so you can tie thread. So Soul is a great film, and I have only watched it once, and I should watch it again. But I also know that the person who played the piano in there is John Batiste, right? So John Batiste is the band leader for the Daily Show, for the not the Daily Show, the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. But he also has a documentary on Netflix, and the name's escaping me right now. But he's married to an author called who wrote the book Between Two Worlds. I think it's Between Two Worlds. She's a cancer survivor, and she wrote a book recently called The Book of Alchemy. I think it is the name of the title. And so I've been looking at that book. I picked up but that goes all the way back to John Baptiste in Soul. So I mean, there's this. So I
Funny.
will probably follow
Right.
John Baptiste's stuff
Yeah.
now because of just that thread. So
Yeah.
Rick Rubin's another one, right? Like, I'll watch Rick Rubin. Oh my goodness, Rick Rubin did this documentary called Shangri-La, which I had not seen before. Oh wow, Seth Godin's in this documentary. I've talked to Seth Godin on my podcast before. How there must be some kind of quote alignment or attunement there. So yeah, and I know I see in the comments here, Jackie's asking about the exact name and publisher of the journals I mentioned. So the first journal is called, well, I mentioned the Inner Jedi Journal, which is I don't know who published it, but it's in the Star. You can find it on Amazon. The Monk Manual, if you go to monkmanual.com, and I'll put a link in the description show notes because I think I know we have an affiliate link, I think, for this. But if you go to monkmanuals.com, you can go there anyway, and you can get the Monk Manual itself or the Life Atlas. And then the 5-minute journal, which again is made by a company called, I believe it's Intelligent Design, and they are based out of Toronto, and they also do a productivity planner.
Okay, a couple more. This was kind of my favorite question that came in because it's absolutely me as well, really. And we've probably kind of touched on it already, really. So, but
Okay.
there might be something else to add. Basically, how to stop procrastinating and start doing what I want to do. But the question's from Matthew. It says, I understand all the theory behind productivity, and I know what to do, but it doesn't stop me from procrastinating. Do you have any tips on how to put the ideas and theory into practice when I lack the focus to implement them?
Okay. So this is whenever someone asks me this, I ask what what kind of tasks are they procrastinating on? I think that's the biggest question up front because it goes back to the urgency important thing, right? Like you can make anything. So if you get clear on what's urgent, and if you're unclear, then you're gonna mislabel and you'll go there. And often urgent stuff, again, like you pointed out, Tim, is external demands. So you get that feedback from others, which
Mhm.
kind of helps you against procrastination because you're getting some feedback. But your own stuff, like when I was working on my books and stuff, you don't get that feedback. And you know this when you're making like no one's
Yeah.
forcing you to do it. So you kind of can take as long as you want, but you know that. And here's the thing, you know that as long as you take, there's a part of your brain going, you should be on this. This is something like you see it. There's visuals there. But if I'll give you two tips that I use, and they can be used for either tasks that you are procrastinating on and hate, or tasks you need to make progress on. So we talked about theories, you talked about framings. The Pomodoro technique is a really quick way that it doesn't require you to adopt time crafting or any other framework, like in terms of, again, layers. Although I think that reading the productivity diet and then applying that in conjunction with the Pomodoro technique can help. But the Pomodoro technique at its base level, unedited, is 4 Pomodoros separated by 5 minutes and then a longer break. And you're supposed to change tasks every Pomodoro. So you're not supposed to continue working on the same one. In fact, you ultimately should be working on 4 completely different tasks over that entire 4 Pomodoro session. And each Pomodoro is 25 minutes for those that you don't know. It's called the Pomodoro because it's named after there was a tomato timer and all that. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And you could use it for tasks. So again, breaking down your projects into the smallest particles, because that can cause procrastination. And then in conjunction with that, okay, here are 4 tasks related to this. I'm going to spend 25 minutes on this one, 25 minutes on that one. And every time the timer goes off, you switch. It promotes neuroplasticity, and there's lots of research around this. We'll put a link in the show notes that kind of gives you a bit of a bird's eye view of, or a cursory view, a glance at all that stuff. But so that's one way. The other is tasks you don't like doing. So you could literally look at your to-do list and go, ugh. Like if you get that feeling of, ugh, I don't want to do this, just put like an X or something next to it that signifies it's a task you don't like. A frowny face, like anything that is kind of signifies that. And then those you would put into a Pomodoro. Because then instead of saying, I only have to work 25 minutes on this for tasks that you want to move forward, it's like, okay, I can put 25 minutes into this because that's what you're doing. In this case, it's, well, I only have to dedicate 25 minutes to this. So I can do that because 25 minutes, I mean, we're already, we've gone through 2 Pomodoros as we've on this live stream. So you can tell how like quickly it can go. So the Pomodoro technique, because it pairs a countdown, a timer, a deadline with a task, in fact, 4, it can keep you moving forward on tasks that you want to make progress on, projects you want to make progress on, as well as tasks you hate. So another example would be today, as we're recording this, it's Monday. My daily theme for Monday is attunement. I could look at all my attunement tasks for the day and do 4 Pomodoros of 25 minutes each attunement tasks. So I would pair a timer-based task with a timer with tasks so that way you can kind of have that balance of quantity and quality. But like you pointed out, Tim, I mean, some of the things we already answered. Get clear about what's urgent, get clear about what's important will help you. Breaking down those projects into the smallest particles will give you easily manageable tasks that you can accomplish, because for every little thing you do, you get a dopamine hit. And I've talked about this before. The reason Inbox Zero is so popular and used as a productivity metric is you can count it. Oh, I have 83 emails that came in today. If I can get through 83 emails, then I did 83 things. But did you? Did you? I mean, not really. I mean, some of those were probably email newsletters. Some of them might have been those quick off the cuff, thanks for this responses. Like there's not a lot of depth. They could be, in fact, some of those emails are complete empty calories. But so using that as a metric for your all of your productivity is a bad idea. Using it for communication, like, hey, look, I got through my inbox. Like, okay, great. That's but inbox zero should not be the goal, because you're never gonna. It's not gonna stay that
Mm.
way. You have external forces coming in. So I would suggest, again, pairing anything that allows quantity and quality to be served. And the Pomodoro technique is quite good at that.
Yeah. Well, you've just sort of touched on the next question I was going to ask, but before we do that,
Sure.
I'm just going to say, if someone's struggling to motivate themselves and to do lots of sort of small tasks, the sort of things that you need to do, but you get to them and you think, oh, I don't feel like doing that now. You never feel like doing those things, do you? One thing that worked for me, I know I did this in the community one time, was to get an online like a spinning wheel of fortune kind of spinning wheel, and then you
Mhm.
can a list of tasks in, and it will just randomly pick them for you, and then you have to do them in whatever order they come. And I found that really effective. So
I,
if you're procrastinating on, if you're
I,
procrastinating on having 10
yeah,
little tasks that have been hanging around for ages, and you just don't feel like doing this one or that one or the other one, well, just like get them to pick them for random,
yeah. I've
and that
got this
can
this
work.
this sorry dice, and it's a 6-sided dice. But you could also get, if you're a Dungeons and Dragons fan, you can get a 20-sided
Yeah,
dice and just
yeah,
roll it.
yeah,
Like, I mean, anything you can do to. I think the key is to make it yours, so that
yeah,
you are making that choice, even if you're having something like you're in charge of the mechanism, and then that thing that helps you make the choice is the mechanism itself. So I mean, what's interesting about this 20-sided dice, which I just grabbed, is I got it as a gift actually from Michael Porter, who's a member of our premium community, and it's all 20 sides. It's all 20.
Ah,
So it's a dice you could use when you're. I'll throw it out there occasionally when I play D&D, and it's like, wait a minute. But you could use, like, there's tons of different sizes of dice too. So you could say, oh, I'm going to use a 10-sided die or whatever. I mean,
mm,
there's lots of different ways to kind of do it. It's just, again, that if you can reduce decision fatigue, that's the
yeah,
key. And the way, and that's ultimately what leads us to. I mean, I've talked about this before: distraction, diversion. Distraction, disruption, diversion is one thing, but this idea of being overwhelmed because you have too many choices, so you have overchoice, or you're overloaded because you've got too many things thrown at you, or you've just carrying too much, or you're overcommitted. Again, back to one of our earlier questions, you said, I can get all this done in a day, and you've overcommitted. Like, any three of those and a combination of them, it's going to be paralyzing. So you need to kind of find something to push you forward. And these tools can be helpful. These mechanisms can be really helpful.
anything that removes a decision or some uncertainty, I think, is helpful. Just probably getting close to the end, I guess. But we had one in from Nahil, and you've kind of touched on this with the inbox zero part. So I think it might be
Mm-hmm.
quite interesting to hear a more full answer, perhaps. He says, how do you define productivity in a way that can be measured and improved upon? Because, as he says, what gets measured gets managed.
So, again, it's a balance of quality and quantity. I think productivity is broken. I talk about this at the end of the productivity diet, because it's the activity of producing. That's essentially what the definition. If you break it down, productivity is the act or ability, although it's more of an act, the activity of producing. So to bring into being, especially in abundance, is normally where they put the end there. But abundance doesn't necessarily translate to quality. In this case, they're talking about abundance in terms of quantity. But and what I mean by that is, people misconstrue that that's what abundance is. But abundance isn't just about numbers; it's about the quality of it as well. To live an abundant life doesn't mean that you do a lot of things. It means you do a lot of things that are of high quality, right? I believe. Like, I think that's a part of it. So to me, the idea of what gets managed gets measured, or what gets measured, like that, it kind of floats. What's the quote again? It's what gets measured gets.
What gets measured gets managed is what he's quoted.
Well, and I think it's what gets managed gets measured too. Like, it works both
Yeah,
ways. But we get too obsessive over numbers, right? And we try to make things objective that are subjective. So You and I, Tim, could very easily both be in Salesforce as an example. And if you're familiar with it and I'm not, the effort on my part will be greater than yours to get the results that would be of higher quality, but they probably won't touch your level of quality because of the familiarity. Does that mean that I was less productive than you? In terms of numbers, yes, but in terms of quality of effort and that kind of thing, no. I would say, or not likely. It's possible. So I think we have overemphasized quantity, and I think that number one, and we've touched on this already a little bit, AI can help with that quantity because it can do some of the things that you don't necessarily need to do. But you have to decide what that is. And that's an example of quality versus because you could just say, hey, AI, do all the things, and guaranteed that the quality of the output will be lower, as opposed to saying, do a little less, but do it right. Measure twice, cut once kind of thing, right? And so because when you're working for an organization that is largely bent on rewarding shareholders, and that often is monetary, we don't think about things like retention and how employee training and professional development has a cost that you don't see. So Costco is a great company to work for in a lot of ways because they minimized so many things around the building and the company that they were able to focus more on the people. And there's a reason why people stay at Costco a long time, because they're treated well. They make more money and that's the other thing too, is because they focus on quality, Costco makes a lot of money. Like they do really, really well. So, and when I interviewed Michael Gerber, we talked about the E-Myth. That was one of the things, like it's very turnkey. And I think unfortunately a lot of businesses, especially younger ones or ones with people who are more managers than leaders, is numbers are the easiest thing to go for because they're objective. Oh, well, and you can spin numbers a lot easier than you can spin quality, right? You can spin like percentages versus whole numbers is a great example. We could say, like I could say, and we've got a handful of people here today, but I could say, 30% of our premium members are here today. People are like, that's pretty big. But if I say what the actual number is, like, it's not so big, right? So it's harder to manipulate quantity or quality. It's harder to manipulate quality. Quantity can be manipulated. So I to answer that question is really tricky because it depends on who's in charge. Like, if someone is so hell bent on measuring metrics and quantity, then you better buy into that. That better be a value that you adhere to. If you don't care about that as much and you feel that you are being pushed in a direction that's like to crank numbers, then you need to start looking elsewhere probably that's what I did when I was working for Lifehack. And I made no secret of this. We hit numbers that I promised we would hit. And then I said, okay, we're here now. They're like, okay, now more. I'm like, but doing any more will reduce the quality of the content. But that wasn't what the concern was at that time. And so I had to make a choice, especially since I called out other websites for doing what they were asking me to do. So I said, no, I'm going to have to move on. And I did. So it's a battle. I love that you asked this question last, because it's one of the things I want to have an impact in is how do I have people say productivity is the activity of producing, whereas productiveness is the state of being productive. I think if you are in the state of productiveness, you have a better chance of not forsaking quality for quantity, right? Because here's the thing: if you break down a project to its smallest increments, Tim, and you check off 14 of those boxes, that's going to seem really super productive to you. But if you didn't break it down and you didn't finish it, then you're not going to check off any boxes and you'll feel like you weren't productive at all, even if you made progress on those things, right? So that would be an example of how do you, because then you can go back to your boss and say, hey, look, these 14 things I did related to this project, right? And so it's a tricky question. It's a mandate that I'd like to have a greater impact on is to say, look, we should be focusing on the state of being productive with occasional bouts of hecticity, which you and I talked about I would say like months ago on this, maybe even longer, as opposed to being trying to, be focused on productivity with hecticness all around us. Because that's the other thing too. It's like, your version of productivity versus mine versus somebody who works at a C-suite level versus somebody who's working, out of another country that their ideas of, because there's this great documentary called Time Thieves that really focuses on European time management practices as well as Asian time management practices. Most of the stuff we get exposed to here in the West is all about North America and all that stuff. So, and it's a very different animal. So it's a tough question to answer, but I would say that if you can find a way to get those numbers to matter more, then you're on your way. Just, you can't forsake quality for quantity, because then you're just churning out stuff. You're just, as like Merlin Mann would say, cranking widgets, as opposed to like actually making something of value that could hopefully stand the test of time.
Yeah, well, and Joyce has made a really nice point in the comment about, productivity means defining what's important and measuring that. So I set 3 key tasks each, and I measure each week, and I measure if I hit them. Last week I did 75 tasks, but not the key ones, not productive. And that goes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier in the conversation about, if you being clear about what it is you're trying to do, and it's doing that you might want to measure, but not everything else. But also, I think it's subjective things. How do you feel about, and that goes back to the journaling,
the answer to Joyce's question. So my question would be like, Joyce, how do you feel about that? Why did that happen? Why? Because the answer to that is, well, the reason I didn't do these 3 things is because, and it could be, I didn't have all the information. I needed to reach out to somebody. I didn't break it down small enough. I hate this thing. It's too big. Like all those things. But we don't. We just what we tend to do, because again, the pace is so, we're working at a very, very, for lack of a better term, hectic pace in a lot of cases. We just go, oh, well, didn't get done. We'll do it next week. I'll push it to tomorrow or the next tomorrow or the next tomorrow or the next tomorrow. And it's funny because we have this ideology of like stoicism that talks about live for today because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Like, remember, you will die. But we also, most of us know that, well, probably not tomorrow though. Probably not going to die tomorrow. But you know what? One day that tomorrow will come. And then you'll ask yourself, well, what did I really do? So that's the hard part is, and the journaling, like we talked about, can answer like, why didn't I do this stuff? Right? Because figuring that out, if you answered all of that, Joyce, your comment, and then instead of saying not productive, all of a sudden said, okay, then I asked myself, and then I journaled about it and figured it out. Then all of a sudden you're a little productive, or that was a really productive thing for me to do. Right. So yeah. And again, she brings up in the comments here, a procrastination about tough tasks. And I mean, that's human nature. And so in our TimeCrafting Trust Premium community, we have the focus fix sessions where it's basically like it's body doubling. But along with so many other things you get inside the community, it's a place where you can go. It's a space of time and a time of space where you can go, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do with it. And this is like a tough, that's why at the end of the productivity, I mentioned the term productiveness. And it's the term I prefer to use because it's the term that predates productivity in the English language as well. So before we started to get so focused on speed and all of that, again, I think there is a balance there. It's just we really struggle to find it because everyone has a different idea of what that looks like.
Great. I think, if you want more questions, I'll be making up silly ones off the top of my head about books and films and sport. What have you learned about time from sport? And there's lots of other things we could talk about, but I suspect we're probably at the end of our time, aren't we, Mike? I think
we're pretty much at time. We're going to do another one of these in October. In October. If you're up for doing this again, Tim, we've got it. So if you're watching this live stream and you have questions that you want to hear maybe in the October episode, which is not too far away, believe it or not, you can just leave comments and we'll grab them from there. But we'll also do another solicitation. And if you're in the community, again, we'll be doing that as well. But this has been great. I mean, it's always fun. I mean, it's always fun to get to talk about this stuff and be on the other side of the equation. And over the years, I've learned to try to not be the host and the guest at the same time. There's been, my early podcasting career, I'm like, I got to get my point across. I mean, there are still instances where I do that, but I've gotten better about it. But it's nice to be on that other side of the coin, and in a space where there's familiarity. I don't have to go over, here's my origin story and here's what time crafting is and such. Most of you that are watching this would be familiar with it. And if you're not, well, there is this book that you can pick up.
It's a bit like you're playing jazz in a club that the audience are familiar to you, so you can improvise and riff on things, and
Absolutely,
it's all very nice and relaxed. It's nothing better than that, really.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, where can people find you and the work that you're doing if they want to keep up with all the stuff you've got going on?
So all the sort of non-work writing, art and poetry things is my blog website. That's just timohair.blog.
Excellent. And as for me, of course, if you want to get all the show notes and stuff when this episode actually comes out, just go to mikevardy.com/podcast616. And this episode's actually dropping in a couple of days. So we've got this kind of raw version of it, but most of this will make the cut of the full episode anyway. And again, if you're listening to this, this recording on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, ratings, reviews are always helpful. YouTube, again, same thing. And next time around, we're back to our regular format. So, Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to pop by and facilitate this conversation today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. We'll see you later.